All right, good evening. This is the Community Preservation Committee public meeting to discuss projects that have been presented to the committee for consideration for annual town meeting in 2017. I'm Bob Bentley. I'm the chairman of the committee. To my left, excuse me, my right is Zach Swain, Jason Pecorelli, Kevin Tracy, Fran Mello, Gail Nowen, and Mary Ross. We're required by the Community Preservation Act to hold a public meeting prior to town meeting to allow townspeople to speak on the issues, or on the project that we have. This has been published in the Old Colony the Carver Reporter for the past 2 weeks as a public notice. Tonight we have one project in front of us, which is basically the discussion of a proposal to fund the costs for the development of plans, specifications, and project management criteria for the Carver Middle High School track and football field reconstruction. The estimated cost is in the amount of $283,499 to be taken from the amounts approved at the 2015 annual town meeting for the Forest Street Recreation Field Project. And we have Town Administrator Michael Milanowski and School Superintendent Scott Neef here to present the proposal. Gentlemen?
I guess we're up. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to be very quick tonight. My job tonight is just to talk about the money, and I believe at our last meeting, we went through the number that is used here. This is a previous appropriation that the town meeting approved, your request for the Forest Street project. You all know why that project is no longer going. So those funds had to be repurposed. We feel that this is a very similar use and the appropriate use to allow us to ask town meeting to reappropriate these funds for this project. At our last meeting, we talked about that number is more or less in the range of what a design would be, as well as project management based upon a $2 to $3 million recreation project. Part of this is to fully evaluate the ability of going to a turf field versus a natural turf field. And we're going to analyze both costs. We recognize that CPC funds cannot be used for building a turf field. And we'll come out with a recommendation that we'll bring to this committee in the future that will define which way to go. Should that decision be to go in a turf field, we will obviously have to identify where those additional funds would come from. So with that, that's what's proposed. Again, we talked about that last meeting. I'm going to turn it over to Superintendent Neef and have him talk about the actual project.
Well, and I'd just like to thank you for considering this project from really the community perspective, but also clearly the school's perspective. I think it's well known within the community that the track is in a little bit of, it's in disrepair at this point. There are sections of the track that are splitting, that are not operable, that really are getting to the point of being unsafe. The football field itself is the original field that was built with the school in 1988. The press box is antiquated and really getting to a point of being unsafe. The bleachers themselves could also use an upgrade. So it's really the whole project within the football field. And really, as I said, it's all the original field and track that was done with the construction of the school in 1987 and 1988. And I do think that it would be an outstanding redoing this and rebuilding this project will really be a community resource that the entire community would be able to access. Obviously, the school would be supportive of the entire community being able to access it, from our youth groups to people just using the track recreationally. So I just think that it's a project that needs to be done, and this is an avenue in which we would be able to financially move forward on bringing this to the community. So I'd just like to thank the committee for taking this under consideration.
Oh, I'd just like to mention about the ducks. I don't think I mentioned it at the last meeting. My understanding, who I've been told from many reliable resources, is the drainage works so well on that field in its existing site that the last 20 yards are underwater most of the time, and the ducks actually waddle around out there.
Yeah, so there is some drainage issues, and especially more towards the back end of the track side as well. So even beyond the field, the track sometimes on the far end towards the woods away from the school does get underwater, does have some drainage issues. It is time for that facility to be upgraded. It's been something that's been on, the track project has been on the capital side, and, in terms of looking at using capital funds to redo the track, and it's just, other decisions have been made in terms of the community, in terms of where the money is going to come. But I do sense within the community there's a feeling that it's a project that needs to be done. It's just what's the best way to finance that. And I think that through the community, the Community Preservation Act and the Community Preservation Committee, your willingness to consider this is greatly appreciated.
Okay, now, I guess one of my first questions is, are you using the Gale report exclusively, or are you going to be supplementing the Gale report? The Gale report's a report that was done by the prior school superintendent, and it came out recommending strongly that we go to artificial turf. But I think it also suggested that the field height should be increased by 4 feet. Is that still intended?
The answer to your question about the Gale report is we're going to use that as a reference document, but we're going to do an independent study with a different firm. We haven't started that process to who it is, but we're going to start over and use that as a reference point. I think at one point we talked about how much 4 feet of fill would be on a football field and a track, and that's an exorbitant amount of material. It may be necessary, but it's something that caught all of us by surprise. And when we do have the flooding, we don't have 4 feet of flooding.
No, the field is not underwater by 4 feet. So yeah, we're definitely open to, or we're going to look for another report to, evaluate the project and what needs to happen.
Okay, because
and then we do want, from the school's perspective, we do want to evaluate the turf versus grass, and we understand the limitations of CPC funds in terms of supporting a turf field. We had done some original investigation on that on the school side as the project's been investigated. The athletic director, Michael Schultz, has done some community surveys in terms of looking what the community would want, and the responses we were getting the first time around was clearly in support of a turf field. But again, that's a process we're willing to go through as well. I do believe, my personal perspective is that ultimately that really should be a community decision, and one that the school wants to weigh in on, but really we want to take what the community wants to do in terms of what they feel is the best scenario in terms of what that field should be, whether it's turf versus grass.
The turf component is a more expensive option to go in, so there is a definite cost for that compared to Carver, which is a farming community. But I'm going to ask Scott to just talk about briefly what the advantages of a turf would be, just to put it in context from a usability standpoint.
The advantages of turf from usability is that the turf doesn't get ripped up. A grass field needs to be reseeded on a regular basis. If it's raining, if it's muddy, that field takes a lot of damage. And a turf field is going to be consistent in terms of its performance and being able to hold events in the rain, hold events at all seasons. Interestingly enough, in terms of the turf as a playing surface, that's really changed. There were early concerns about whether turf caused more injuries, but actually the turf they use now, it's like pelletized rubber. It's torn up tires that actually has a little bit of give to it. And so I don't know if you've seen the fields, that if you've seen people run on a turf field, actually you can see it popping up. So the field actually has a little give to it. So from a safety perspective, actually, in some levels, it's considered to be a safer field, a safer place for people to play on. Where in the beginning with turf fields, there was some question of whether it actually caused more injuries. So ultimately, from durability, from a safety perspective, from being able to be used at all times, the turf field does provide a lot of benefits.
And the reason why I'm talking about turf is that, that there is a a specific clause in Community Preservation Act that says you cannot use preservation monies for turf.
Right.
I think it was put in by one legislator, but it's in there.
But it's
So-
there. So we realized that if we went in that direction, the purchase and installation of the turf would have to come from another revenue source.
And I think if you were going to come into this committee saying that you wanted to do turf, we'd want to know for sure that you had that input from the community, from an open forum in the community to discuss
Yeah,
it.
and I guess I'm reiterating what I just said earlier, but I do strongly believe it really should be a community. I think it should be a community decision. This track and field has been there now for almost 30 years. My assumption is what we're going to create is going to be there for 30 years. And so that's past my time, even that I'm probably going to be in Carver. So that it really should be a decision that the entire community weighs in on. And when I say the entire community, I don't mean just our high school coaches or just our high school parents. It should be what everybody feels is the best decision in terms of moving forward on the field.
All right. Questions from committee members?
How would you generate response from the community?
Well, I think we'd have to, we have the ability to survey, which obviously I can survey the school-age population and parents, but through the town website, we could survey the entire community. I think we'd have to, as Mr. Bentley said, I think we'd have to hold some open forums. So we'd have to set aside some times where we give people the opportunity to come in and give input and give their sense of what they wanted to see within the field. I think when we get to the point of having the plan and the specs in place, and almost sort of like we did with the school building over at the elementary school, we're gonna have to say, here's plan A, here's plan B, here's the realities of the costs of plan A and plan B, and what's your feedback on them? What would you like to see happen? And clearly we would invite the CPC to be involved in that process as much as you want it to be.
Sure. Fran?
You're asking for $280,000 to be transferred from a project that we had going here in town that we decided was not going to be feasible. What are you going to do with that money?
So that money is going to be utilized to go forward and hire a consultant to come in and do a new objective feasibility study to analyze both approaches, and then to start to do the base design of those two approaches. Once a decision is made on what option to go forward with, that money would be utilized to finish the design. Now, as part of that, there's going to have to be a lot of engineering analysis, there's going to have to be surveys done, there's going to have to be soil analysis, boring analysis, building code analysis, because now with the new stadium seats, you now have to have them handicap accessible. The press box has to be handicap accessible. There's going to have to be drainage calculations. We're going to end up hiring a owner's project manager, which is what we do for big projects. We're doing that for the roof, boilers, and windows of the middle high school. We're doing that for the elementary school, the fire station. And so we'll be, in essence, hiring a professional firm to kind of oversee this and make sure that no stones are unturned. And, through the collaborative efforts that Scott and I and others have been doing, every major projects that he and I officially have been involved in have been coming in under budget as things go forward. So we try to look at scenarios that are the most cost-effective way of providing a durable product that's going to meet its intended use. We're not looking for Cadillac versions of anything, but we're looking for long-term durability.
Do you know how much the Gill report cost?
The what?
Gill report, the first feasibility study?
I believe the number that I remember was like $30-some
Yeah, I was gonna
thousand. And again, that was a that didn't go into the detail that we're going to go into to make sure that this is done correctly. I will tell you, I think when we were at our last meeting over at the fire station, we had our project manager for the elementary school, and I believe that's when he said that the numbers that we were looking at would be, the percentage. I think he might have had a number that, if he did a straight percentage, it would have come in around $275 to $300,000 for a project like this, a $2 to $3 million project. And, it just so happens that that vote that you guys did for Article 9 was for 283, which just happens to fall right in the middle of that range.
So with the 280, what are you expecting to get? A feasibility study, engineering, core costs, you're gonna be able to look at the field, lay everything out, everything other than the building?
Yes,
Yes.
and that'll
Yes.
include the design specifications where we get a big packet of drawings that would be on there. That would then be put in the form of bid specifications. We'd be able to then go out and put that out on the street, advertise that, and have contractors come in and give official bids as to what the cost would be. So this should take us through bid documents that we have a final cost for the project, that then we can say, okay, town meeting, if everything works perfect, what we're gonna have is we're gonna have a final cost for the project of going in the direction that we choose to, and then we'll be able to bring that final number to town meeting. When, for example, when we did the fire station, even the elementary school, is we came back to what our estimate was, and town meeting approved money to cover that estimate. But we didn't know what the final cost is. In this situation, the hope is that we have a final number that we're going to say it's going to be, $2,727,000. I'm picking a number, and then that's the number we'll be asking for, plus 5% for contingency stuff that's there. So we're hoping that we can that this will take us to the point where we can actually get to that number.
But if you talk about a $2.2 million project,
Mm-hmm.
and you're talking 10%, you're talking $60,000, which is not a huge sum, but it's not a small sum. What is the insurance if this money is transferred over to look at this project, that anything that isn't done under the engineering, the feasibility study, the kind of laying out the plan for the project would come back to us?
Well, first is based upon the vote and how it's written. We can't buy textbooks. We can't go out and buy a police cruiser. We can't.
But this is very kind of fluffy as far
Oh,
as.
no. I mean, when you're talking plan specs and project management for specifically that project, that's all we can use it for. And hopefully by now, and Scott too, we built up enough, hopefully, trust with the public that anything that we're touching, we're very transparent. And, we're asking you to rely on us to do the job. And we're saying, here's what we think it's going to cost to do us. And hopefully you believe we've proven ourselves to say, okay, I have confidence in how they've been delivering projects. Go for it.
Well, I guess one of my concerns is we spent $30,000 on a study that told us this was going to cost $2.2 million. And now we're gonna spend another sum of money. And it doesn't equate to what we're going on for a guideline. So if the Gale study cost us $30,000, and we're saying now we need, 10% of the project, why, can we rely on the Gale study?
No, that's why we're not relying on the Gale study.
It goes back to, how do we know that this $280,000
Oh.
is going to be a good spend?
Okay.
I guess and I don't know if you want to respond, my only thought on response to that is that the Gale study didn't develop specific plans. It didn't establish bid specs. It didn't have any level of project management. It just laid out a cost of, this is the conditions of your current field, and this is what it would take to build a new field. There was no specifics in terms of engineering, so I think we're talking about something that's a little bit more complex in terms of design and scope, And I like what you said in terms of, at the end, our goal is that, at the end of that being done, we're ready to hit the street and get bids and move forward on the project if the committee approves it or the town approves it through town meeting. So I do think the scope of the Gale study was limited in compared to what we're proposing here.
And I think to dig down that a little bit deeper is, yes, the Gale study, I believe the number for the Gale study was 2.8 to 3.2 is kind of the range for their two different scenarios. We've gone out and done some independent research and talked to our project managers, and there's a lot of new schools that are being built. When a new school is being built, they're generally not building grass fields anymore. They're going to turf because they got the year-round usage of it. And those are running, depending upon the school, depending upon the complexity, depending upon the Cadillac version, anywhere from 2.5 to 2.5 to $5 or $6 million. Again, when you're getting up there in the $4 or $5 million, it's for a large city complex type thing that they're used to having 1,000 or 2,000 people come to the games. Obviously, we're not that thing. So the numbers that we're giving you of the 2.5 to 3.5 or, in that range is what we believe this project's going to cost, because in today's age, you also have the whole issue of the ADA issues, which, adds a double-digit percentage to any of these projects. Tied into that, you have to deal with the bathroom component for these. So when you're building a stands, you then have to treat that as though it's like a building. So for every so many seats in the stands, hypothetically, if it's 150 seats, you need a men's and ladies' bathroom. In the past, for a project, what do you have down there right now? Two bathrooms right now? None.
We don't have it, we have porta potties.
Yeah.
We have porta potties and a bathroom with a concession stand and the school. This is my bathroom.
Accessible, so if you actually open the school at that time, when, football games were going on or track meets were going on, that also counts to that.
It's too far away, is our understanding, that the school is technically not connected.
And that's something we're gonna have to investigate.
Right.
So we haven't actually gone down to that. You're correct, that if the facility is within a certain distance of the school and the school is open, then you meet the requirements. But if you're beyond a certain distance, and we haven't gone to that level of specificity, but the report's clearly gonna do that. And they're gonna come back and say, yeah, you are compliant and you don't need to put in all these bathrooms, or you're not, and you do if you're gonna build the stadium here.
What I would like to see, honestly, I'm not trying to put roadblocks in anyone's way, and I'm also not trying to, monopolize the meeting. But for $280,000, I would like to see more information about where that money is gonna go, what the estimate for that money is, and more checks and balances on when that money leaves the fund that it's in, that it's being utilized properly, that's all. And maybe that means a committee, maybe that means, we have a school committee to help make sure that everything that needs to go on that way goes on. Maybe we need a committee on the CPC to follow this money, because it's a lot of money.
Sure. And just on that, any expenditures that happen, they all come back to your committee that you get to review those. And although we haven't spent a lot of time thinking about the structure and how we go about testing this, there's certainly going to be a lot of community input, and at some point there will be some type of a committee involved into putting this together. We just haven't formulated what that's going to be. But rest assured, you will get everything that you need for this, because it's our reputation, our word on the line that, this is what we're going to do. And, we're not going to, but if we screw up in this project, guess what? You're not going to support us in another project. And that's why I'm saying I think that, hopefully you've seen that we've been very successful in what we're doing. And, we're going to do this in the most professional and ethical and transparent fashion possible.
And then, excuse my naivete in terms of the CPC process, my assumption is if the money is not spent, it goes back to the committee. It can be reallocated.
Which is excellent.
Right,
It's
so-
like getting money back.
Right, so that would be our expectation, is we have a dollar amount here, but anything that You know, it doesn't mean we're gonna spend $283,499, and what isn't spent is gonna be goes back to the committee to reallocate.
So that I fundamentally have a problem with moving money that we have given to one project into another project. Because I think, sometimes people just look at the dollar figure and they don't understand the background of where it came. And this $280,000 that you're requesting was given for a town field, which ended up not being feasible. I just would be more comfortable if it was a new request for new money, and if the town recreation department was not able to utilize that money because of the circumstances of the field that it was appropriated to, that it came back and then was reappropriated.
So on the forestry project, I mean, that's a great example of a project that, yes, there was funding approved for. When we got into the detail, when we left the type of project, like the type of report like Gail did, and we got into real engineering and started to look at it, it didn't work. So what did we all do? We all said, time out, stop, let's keep a few dollars just to fill some potholes in the field, but we're done. And so technically that comes back to the CPC, and everyone agreed no one's going to spend any more money out of that. So it's done. In essence, what we're doing right here is doing the same thing. It's just that it's not done in 4 steps. It's saying, okay, by this vote, in essence, what you're saying is you're abandoning the Forest Street Recreation Project. You're terminating it. With that, you had $283,000 allocated to that project. And now you're going to terminate that project and reallocate that fund in a new vote, so it's new money, it's technically new money, into this project. So although that's written in one sentence, what you're asking is what this is doing, because it's going to town meeting, and I'm sure as part of the presentation, Mary's going to have to get up as part of the Recreation Committee. She may not know this yet, but I'm just kind of leading her in that direction, that she's going to have to come up and say, hey, the forestry project didn't happen, so we're asking by this vote for you to terminate that project, and then with this vote, to provide new money to this new project, which is going to serve the same recreation purpose, just in a different location, and we think that this is going to be a better project.
And as long as we're all transparent about that, and that's kind of the way it's presented, I'm good with that. Then it goes to town meeting, and they decide.
Yep.
I
Got
would-
that, Mary? You got-
I got it. I would also, I know that you are much more in tune with feasibility studies and what goes into them. But for those of us who are on the rec committee and we're rookies, if it's not spelled out in the contract, it does not happen.
Correct.
So if you don't have soil samples specified, how many, how much, all of that. And so that contributed largely to a longer time to determine that it wasn't going to be a large project.
Because you didn't have any of that soil samples, that data in the report. You didn't have enough of it to actually do it.
No.
And
We had drawings, lovely
Yeah.
drawings.
Right. Right. And we have drawings too. We got great drawings. I think they're emailed to you. They look great, don't they? But they're drawings.
Right.
And-
But you have to be very specific with everything. Otherwise, it costs more money to get someone else to go do it.
Exactly, and I don't want to.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a
Well,
quick
I
little.
was saying that to relieve you.
Just a quick little side story is that the project that Scott and I are working on is we're having an issue with one of the contractors. Not that they're not doing quality work, but they're just putting us in a position that we feel it could create a liability down the town. And right now, by our contract, it's an extremely onerous contract to our benefit and not to the contractor's benefit. So, the contractor's trying to create some wiggle room in there, and we're saying, nope, not going to happen. And we have our project manager to make sure that that's doing. And it's gotten to the point where we felt we've tried to work this out. We couldn't work it out, so now we have a 3-page letter coming from the lawyer Contract's firm, we're not moving, we're not giving you an inch. Kevin, you know all about the North Carver Water District.
Yes, I do.
We're not going down that direction again.
Thank you.
And that's what you gotta do.
But ultimately, the project management piece of this, you know, in terms of the request, I think that's what the project manager is going to provide for us. You know, that level of detail, that, to ensure that we have the appropriate, proper level of detail and specificity on all those things.
And I wanted to mention, just so that the community knows, that the CPC has had in place since our inception a lot of oversight on every single project. We actually look at every single bill. We have to have sign-offs on every bill. The town accountant won't accept it unless we've got sign-offs. So we purposely have built in procedures to make sure that we've got a fair amount of oversight. And I think the town administrator understands that very well.
And, you know, in our last meeting we had over the fire station, if you recall what Chad presented for the recreation complex at the elementary school, remember those sheets where everything was specified by dollar unit and everything? That's what you will eventually get through this process, and you'll have that.
Are there any other questions?
I'm good.
Hearing no other questions, we plan to vote on this at our next meeting. And I guess I'll declare the public meeting closed.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Great,
coming.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your support.